I gave you everything, Zeke. My love, my trust, my father's legacy, and this is how you repay me? I gripped the damning photos in my shaking hands, the glossy images of my husband's infidelity blurring through my tears. It wasn't supposed to be like this. When Zeke and I first met, it was a whirlwind romance. He was charming, ambitious, and innovative, everything I thought I wanted in a partner. My father, the founder of our successful real estate development company, took an immediate liking to him. Zeke joined the company and quickly gained favor, his star rising as a brilliant architect. But as his reputation grew, so did his ego. Late nights, schmoozing clients at fancy dinners and exclusive clubs became the norm. When I expressed my concerns, Zeke dismissed them, claiming I didn't understand the demands of his job. I wanted to believe him, to trust that his heart remained true to me and our daughter, Violet. I was blind. Or maybe I just didn't want to see. The photos in my hands told a different story. There was Zeke, his lips locked with a young interns at a company event. Natalie, her name was, pretty, ambitious, and clearly enamored with my husband. Mom? Violet's voice shook me from my thoughts. What's wrong? I hastily wiped my tears, but it was too late. She'd seen the photos scattered across my desk. It's your father, I managed, my voice breaking. He's been having an affair. Violet's face contorted with anger. What? With who? An intern? Natalie? That bastard! Violet slammed her fist on the desk. You have to confront him, Mom. This can't go on. I shook my head, fear gripping my heart. I can't. The scandal, the company. Your grandfather's health is declining. The stress could kill him. And what about the stress this is causing you? Violet demanded. He doesn't deserve your protection, Mom. Not anymore. Deep down, I knew she was right. But the thought of my carefully constructed world crumbling around me was paralyzing. The sound of the front door opening snapped me back to reality. Zeke was home, no doubt fresh from another late night at the office. I quickly gathered the photos, shoving them into a drawer. Violet glared as Zeke entered the room, his suit impeccable, but the scent of unfamiliar perfume clinging to him like a guilty verdict. What's with the long faces? He asked, his charm now seeming so false, so hollow. Before I could respond, Violet stepped forward, her eyes blazing with fury. How could you, Dad? How could you cheat on Mom, on our family, with some intern? Zeke's eyes widened, darting to me in panic. Stella, I can explain, but I held up a hand, silencing him. The pain in my heart had crystallized into something harder, sharper. Determination. No more lies, Zeke, I said coldly. No more excuses. You've made your choice. Now you'll face the consequences. I didn't know what those consequences would be yet, but one thing was certain. I would not let this man destroy everything my father had built, everything I had worked so hard to protect, even if it meant destroying him first. The next morning, I arrived at the office early, my mind still reeling from the revelation of Zeke's betrayal. As I walked through the halls, I overheard a conversation that stopped me in my tracks. I'm telling you, man, Zeke's got it made, a male colleague said. That new intern, Natalie, she's practically eating out of his hand. He said she's the reason he landed the Johnsons' project. Laughter echoed from the room. I bet she is. I heard they have a special bond, if you know what I mean. Rage boiled inside me. Not only was Zeke cheating, but he was using his affair to advance his career. I fought the urge to storm in and confront him, knowing I needed to play this smart. My phone buzzed with a text from Violet. Skipped school, following Dad, caught him bringing Natalie to the lake house, taking pictures now. My heart sank. The lake house was our family's sanctuary, a place filled with cherished memories. How dare he taint it with his sordid affair? I quickly replied, telling Violet to be careful and come home immediately. Then I made a decision. If Zeke wanted to play dirty, I'd dig up every speck of dirt on his precious Natalie. A few phone calls later, I had my answer. Natalie had a history of seducing married men at her previous jobs, using her charm to extract money, gifts, and favors. She was nothing but a gold-digging homewrecker. As I sat fuming in my office, my secretary knocked on the door, her face ashen. Mrs. Delaney, I'm so sorry. It's your father. He's had a heart attack. The world tilted beneath my feet. What? Is he? He's alive, but in critical condition. Your mother is with him at the hospital. I rushed to the hospital, my thoughts a tangled mess of grief, anger, and fear. When I arrived, my mother was in tears, clutching my father's hand as he lay unconscious, hooked up to beeping machines. Zeke burst in moments later, his face a mask of concern. Stella, I came as soon as I heard. How is he? I couldn't even look at him, my disgust threatening to overwhelm me. Like you care. You're probably just worried about your precious promotion. How can you say that? Zeke had the audacity to sound wounded. Your father is like a second dad to me. I love him. Spare me the act, Zeke. I know about Natalie. I know everything. Before he could respond, the doctor entered, his expression grim. I'm sorry, but Mr. Delaney has passed away. We did everything we could. The room spun. I collapsed into a chair, my mother's wails echoing in my ears. Zeke tried to embrace me, but I shoved him away, repulsed by his touch. The funeral was a blur. Zeke played the role of the grieving son-in-law to perfection, shaking hands and accepting condolences, but I caught him whispering to Natalie, their heads bent together conspiratorially. After the service, the family lawyer gathered us for the reading of the will. To everyone's shock, my father had named me the sole heir and CEO of the company. Zeke's face contorted with rage, his mask slipping. Violet squeezed my hand, her voice low. I told Grandpa about Zeke's cheating before he died. He wanted to make sure we were protected. Zeke cornered me after the lawyer left, his eyes blazing. This is absurd, Stella. You know I'm the one who should be running the company. You're not cut out for this. I stood my ground, drawing strength from my daughter's love and my father's trust. The only thing absurd here is your behavior, Zeke. You've lied, cheated, and betrayed this family. You're not fit to lead a dog on a leash, let alone this company. You're making a huge mistake, Stella, Zeke snarled. If you don't give me control, I'll ruin you. I'll destroy everything you hold dear. I looked him straight in the eye, my resolve unwavering. Bring it on, Zeke. You have no idea what I'm capable of. You want a war? You've got one. The first order of business was to remove Zeke from the company. I had him escorted from the building, his access revoked, and his email account terminated. The look of shock and fury on his face as security led him out was a small victory, but I knew it was only the beginning. Next, I called an emergency board meeting. Armed with the evidence of Zeke's affair and unethical business practices, I laid bare his betrayal. The board was stunned, but unanimously voted to support my decision to fire him. I thought I'd feel a sense of triumph, but all I felt was a hollow ache in my chest. The man I had loved, the father of my child, was nothing but a snake in the grass. Zeke wasted no time retaliating. He started calling our clients, spinning tales of my incompetence and instability. He even went to the media, painting me as a scorned, vengeful wife who couldn't handle the pressure of running a company. But his most vicious move came in the form of a lawsuit. Natalie, the intern he'd been sleeping with, filed a sexual harassment claim against the company. She alleged that I had created a toxic work environment out of jealousy and spite. I was served the papers in the middle of a client meeting. As I read the lurid accusations, my stomach churned with rage and disgust. This is all lies, I said through gritted teeth. Zeke is behind this. He's using her to get back at me. My lawyer, a fierce woman named Olivia, placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. We'll fight this, Stella. Zeke and Natalie won't get away with it. But the damage was done. The lawsuit hit the news, and suddenly, our company was synonymous with scandal. Clients started pulling their projects, investors backed out, and our stock prices plummeted. I was drowning, barely keeping my head above water as I fought to save my father's legacy. Violet, my rock through it all, refused to let me give up. We'll find a way to beat them, Mom, she said, her eyes blazing with determination. We just need to fight fire with fire. Late one night, as I pored over legal documents and financial reports, Violet burst into my home office. Mom, look what I found. She thrust her phone into my hands, a series of texts displayed on the screen. I read them quickly, my heart pounding. They were messages between Zeke and Natalie detailing their plan to take over the company and force me out. I hacked into Dad's old phone, Violet explained. He never changed his password. There's more, Mom. Natalie's pregnant. She's claiming it's Dad's baby, but I think it's all part of their scheme. I felt sick to my stomach. Zeke's cruelty knew no bounds. He was willing to use an innocent child as a pawn in his twisted game. We need to expose them, I said, my voice shaking with anger. We need to show the world what kind of monsters they really are. Violet nodded, a fierce smile on her face. I have an idea. The annual company gala is coming up. What if we confront them there, in front of everyone? We can present the evidence, expose their lies, and watch them crash and burn. It was a risky plan, but I was out of options. Zeke and Natalie had backed me into a corner, and I was ready to come out swinging. "Let's do it," I said, my resolve hardening. "Let's take those bastards down." As I hugged my daughter close, I felt a flicker of hope amidst the darkness. Zeke had underestimated me, underestimated the strength of a mother's love and the power of the truth. He wanted a war? He was about to get one hell of a battle. The night of the gala arrived, and I was a bundle of nerves. Violet and I had spent weeks gathering evidence, piecing together the sordid details of Zeke and Natalie's scheme. We had bank statements, recorded conversations, and a damning trail of emails that painted a clear picture of their deceit. I smoothed my hands over my dress, a sleek black number that made me feel powerful, armored. Violet squeezed my hand as we entered the ballroom, the glittering chandeliers and elegant decor, a stark contrast to the ugliness we were about to expose. Zeke was holding court in the center of the room, Natalie draped on his arm like a trophy. They were all smiles and charm, working the crowd with their lies and manipulation. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation. With Violet by my side, I approached the stage, the evidence clutched tightly in my hands. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?" My voice rang out over the din of conversation, and the room fell silent. Zeke's eyes narrowed as he saw me, his jaw clenching with anger. Natalie's smile faltered, a flicker of fear crossing her face. "I have something important to share with all of you tonight," I continued, my heart pounding in my chest. "The truth about Zeke Delaney and Natalie Summers." I held up the stack of documents, my hands shaking slightly. "These are records of their affair, their conspiracy to defraud this company and steal my family's legacy. They've been lying to all of us, manipulating and scheming for their own gain." The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. Zeke's face turned an ugly shade of red, his fists clenched at his sides. "This is ridiculous, Stella," he spat. "You're just a bitter, jealous woman who can't handle the fact that I've moved on. Those documents are forgeries, lies." Natalie nodded, her eyes wide with false innocence. "She's crazy. I'm just an intern. I would never do something like this." But I wasn't finished. "There's more," I said, my voice steady. "Natalie is pregnant. She's been claiming the baby is Zeke's, using it as leverage to force me out of the company." Zeke blanched, his mouth falling open in shock. Natalie's hand flew to her stomach, her eyes darting around the room in panic. "That's not true!" Zeke shouted, his voice cracking. "The baby is mine. Stella is just trying to turn everyone against me." I shook my head, a mirthless smile on my face. "Oh, really? Then how do you explain these text messages detailing your plans to use the pregnancy to extort money from multiple men?" I held up my phone, the damning texts displayed on the screen. The crowd gasped, their faces a mix of shock and disgust. "And as for the paternity of the baby," Violet chimed in, "we have DNA test results proving that Zeke is not the father. Natalie has been playing all of you, just like she played my dad." The room exploded into chaos. Zeke lunged for me, his face contorted with rage, but security held him back. Natalie collapsed to the floor, sobbing and wailing about how she'd been set up. The police arrived moments later, handcuffs at the ready. As they led Zeke and Natalie away, reading them their rights, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was over. The truth had prevailed, and my father's legacy was safe. I turned to Violet, tears streaming down my face. "We did it, baby. We won." She hugged me tightly, her own tears mingling with mine. "I'm so proud of you, Mom. You're the strongest person I know." As the guests began to disperse, whispering and gossiping about the night's events, I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more battles to fight, more wounds to heal, but for now, I savored the victory, the knowledge that I had faced my demons and emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. Zeke had tried to break me, to shatter everything I held dear. But he had underestimated the power of a woman's resilience, the unbreakable bond of a mother and daughter united against all odds. And that was a mistake he would regret for the rest of his miserable life. The fallout from the gala was immediate and intense. The news of Zeke and Natalie's arrests spread like wildfire, plastered across every newspaper and gossip site in the city. The company was inundated with calls from reporters, investors, and clients demanding answers. I spent hours in meetings with the board, lawyers, and PR teams, trying to control the narrative and minimize the damage. It was exhausting, but I refused to let Zeke's actions destroy everything we had built. Violet was my rock through it all, keeping me focused and grounded. She even took on some of the media responsibilities, giving interviews and statements with a poise and maturity far beyond her years. "You're amazing. You know that?" I told her one evening, as we sat in my office, surrounded by stacks of paperwork. "I couldn't do this without you." She grinned, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Well, someone has to keep you in line, Mom. Can't have you going all scorned woman on us again." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. "I think I'll leave the dramatics to the soap operas from now on." But our moment of levity was short-lived. The next day, I received a call from the prison where Zeke was being held. "Mrs. Delaney, this is Warden Johnson. I'm afraid I have some bad news. Your husband was found dead in his cell this morning. It appears to be a suicide." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. For all his flaws and betrayals, Zeke had once been the love of my life, the father of my child. The thought of him taking his own life, alone and desperate, was almost too much to bear. Violet found me in my room, staring blankly at the wall. "Mom, what's wrong?" I told her the news, my voice hollow and distant. She sat beside me, her arms wrapped around my shoulders as I wept. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she whispered. "I know you loved him, despite everything." I nodded, my tears soaking her shirt. "I did. God help me, I did. But I also hated him for what he did to us, to the company. I don't know how to feel." "You don't have to know," Violet said softly. "You're allowed to grieve, to be angry, to feel however you need to feel. But don't let his choices define you, Mom. You're so much stronger than that." Her words were like a beacon in the darkness, guiding me back to shore. I hugged her tightly, marveling at the incredible young woman she had become. The funeral was a small, somber affair. I stood beside Violet, holding her hand as we watched the casket being lowered into the ground. Natalie was there, her belly swollen with her lies, her face a mask of crocodile tears. I felt a flicker of pity for her, mixed with a simmering rage. She had been a pawn in Zeke's game, but she had also made her own choices, her own mistakes. She would have to live with the consequences, just as I would. As the mourners dispersed, I caught a glimpse of a familiar face in the crowd. It was Olivia, my lawyer, her expression grim. "Stella, I need to talk to you," she said, pulling me aside. "It's about Zeke's death. The police found a note in his cell addressed to you." My heart seized in my chest. "What did it say?" Olivia hesitated, her eyes filled with concern. "He claimed that you drove him to it, that you ruined his life and left him no choice. He's trying to make you responsible, even in death." I felt a white-hot anger surge through me, mingled with a sickening dread. Even from beyond the grave, Zeke was still trying to manipulate me, to twist the truth to suit his own ends. "He's not going to win, Olivia," I said, my voice low and fierce. "I won't let him destroy me, not anymore. I'm going to fight back, with everything I have." Olivia nodded, a glimmer of admiration in her eyes. "I know you will, Stella, and I'll be right there beside you, every step of the way." As I walked away from the cemetery, Violet's hand clasped tightly in mine. I knew that the battle was far from over. Zeke's final act of cruelty had opened up a new front in the war, one that threatened to consume me from the inside out. But I also knew that I had the strength, the courage, and the love to prevail. I had my daughter, my company, and the truth on my side. And that was a force that even death itself could not defeat. 1 year later, I stood at the podium addressing a room full of journalists and industry leaders. The company had not only survived the scandal, but thrived under my leadership. We had expanded into new markets, taken on innovative projects, and cemented our reputation as a force to be reckoned with. But the road to recovery had been long and painful. In the wake of Zeke's death and the revelation of his final cruel message, I had been besieged by media attacks and legal challenges. Natalie, desperate to save herself, had tried to paint me as a ruthless, vindictive woman who had driven her poor, innocent lover to suicide. It was a narrative that some were all too eager to believe. I faced accusations, investigations, and even death threats from those who bought into Zeke and Natalie's lies. But I refused to back down. With Violet and Olivia by my side, I fought back against every false claim, every attempt to smear my name and my company. We dug deeper into Zeke and Natalie's past, uncovering a trail of deception and manipulation that stretched back years. We found other women Zeke had targeted, other companies he had tried to infiltrate and destroy. We exposed Natalie's history of extortion and fraud, revealing the true depths of her cruelty and greed. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. The media started to question Natalie's credibility, to see through the cracks in her story. The legal challenges against me were dismissed, one by one, as the evidence of my innocence mounted. And then, the final blow. Natalie's web of lies unraveled completely when it was revealed that the child she had claimed was Zeke's had actually been fathered by another married man she had been scheming against. She was arrested and charged with multiple counts of fraud and extortion. As I watched her being led away in handcuffs, I felt a sense of grim satisfaction. She had thought she could destroy me, could use my pain and grief as a weapon against me. But she had underestimated the strength of a woman who had already lost everything and survived. Violet, now a successful artist in her own right, had channeled her own pain and anger into her work. Her pieces, raw and powerful, had garnered critical acclaim and sparked important conversations about toxic masculinity and the resilience of women. "I'm so proud of you, Violet," I told her, as we celebrated her latest exhibition. "You've taken the darkest moments of our lives and turned them into something beautiful, something meaningful." She hugged me tightly, her eyes shining with tears. "I learned from the best, Mom. You showed me what it means to be strong, to fight for what's right, no matter the cost." I smiled, feeling a sense of peace and purpose that had eluded me for so long. "We've both come so far, haven't we? Sometimes I can hardly believe it." "Believe it, Mom," Violet said, her voice filled with conviction. "We're survivors, you and me. We're unbreakable." As I looked out over the city skyline, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and gold, I knew she was right. Zeke and Natalie had tried to break me, to shatter my world into a million pieces. But I had taken those pieces and rebuilt myself, stronger and more resilient than ever before. I had my daughter, my company, and the knowledge that I had faced the worst that life could throw at me and emerged victorious. I was a survivor, a fighter, a woman who had claimed her power and her truth. And I knew, with a certainty that burned bright in my soul, that nothing and no one could ever take that away from me again. As I stepped down from the podium to a standing ovation, I caught Violet's eye in the crowd. She grinned at me, her fist raised in a gesture of solidarity and triumph. "Here's to the future, Mom," she mouthed, her eyes sparkling with pride and love. I raised my own fist in return, feeling a rush of gratitude and joy that brought tears to my eyes. Here's to the future, indeed, a future that we had fought for, that we had earned, that we had claimed as our own. A future that belonged to us and us alone. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Zeke and Natalie sat at the defendant's table, their faces pale and drawn. They had been denied bail, deemed a flight risk after the extent of their crimes had been revealed. I sat in the front row, Violet and Olivia beside me. We had spent months preparing for this moment, gathering evidence and testimony, yet building an airtight case against the two people who had nearly destroyed our lives. As the judge entered the room, I felt a shiver run down my spine. This was it, the moment of truth, the final reckoning. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Valerie, laid out the case against Zeke and Natalie with ruthless efficiency. She detailed their schemes, their lies, their callous disregard for the lives they had ruined. She called witness after witness, each one painting a damning picture of greed, manipulation, and betrayal. Former employees, clients, even some of Natalie's other victims, they all took the stand, their voices shaking with anger and pain. And then it was my turn. As I walked to the witness box, I felt a rush of nerves and adrenaline, but I also felt a sense of clarity, a deep conviction in the truth of my words. I told my story from the beginning, the love, the trust, the dreams that Zeke and I had shared, the slow, insidious unraveling of our marriage as his ego and ambition consumed him, the devastating discovery of his affair, his betrayal, his cruelty. I spoke of the battle to save my company, my father's legacy, from their clutches, the lies, the smears, the legal challenges that had nearly broken me. But I also spoke of the strength I had found in my daughter in my friends, in the power of the truth. As I finished my testimony, I looked directly at Zeke and Natalie, my eyes blazing with a fierce, righteous anger. "You thought you could destroy me," I said, my voice ringing out clear and strong. "You thought you could take everything I had, everything I loved, and crush it beneath your feet. But you were wrong." Zeke's face twisted with rage. His fists clenched at his sides. Natalie's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape, a way out. "I am not the weak, broken woman you thought I was," I continued, my voice rising with each word. "I am a survivor, a fighter, a mother who would move heaven and earth to protect her child, and I will not rest until justice is served, until you pay for every last one of your crimes." The courtroom erupted in applause, the sound washing over me like a wave. I looked over at Violet, tears streaming down her face, her eyes shining with pride and love. The judge called for order, his gavel banging against the bench. And then, the moment we had all been waiting for. In the case of the state versus Ezekiel Delaney and Natalie Summers, on the charges of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy, the jury finds the defendants guilty on all counts. The words hit me like a thunderbolt, a shock of joy and relief that brought me to my knees. Violet and Olivia were there in an instant, their arms around me, their tears mingling with my own. I watched as Zeke and Natalie were led away in handcuffs, their faces contorted with shock and disbelief. They had thought themselves invincible, untouchable, above the law and the consequences of their actions. But they had been wrong. They had underestimated the power of justice, the strength of a woman's will, the unbreakable bond of a mother and daughter united against all odds. As I walked out of the courtroom, my head held high, my heart filled with a fierce, unshakable joy, I knew that this was only the beginning. There would be more challenges ahead, more battles to fight, more wounds to heal. But I also knew that I had the strength, the courage, and the love to face them all. I had my daughter, my company, and the knowledge that I had faced the worst that life could throw at me and emerged victorious. I was a survivor, a fighter, a woman who had claimed her power and her truth. And nothing, not even the darkest of demons, could ever take that away from me again. 5 years later, I stood on the balcony of my new office, overlooking the city skyline. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow over the buildings and streets below. It was a moment of quiet reflection, a chance to take stock of how far I had come. The company had thrived under my leadership, growing and expanding in ways I had never dreamed possible. We had taken on new challenges, new projects, new frontiers, and emerged stronger and more successful than ever before. But it wasn't just the business that had flourished. Violet had blossomed into an incredible young woman, her artistic talent and passion taking her to new heights. She had just opened her first solo exhibition, a stunning collection of pieces that explored themes of resilience, healing, and the power of the human spirit. As I looked out over the city, I felt a sense of peace and contentment that had eluded me for so long. The wounds of the past had healed, the scars faded into a distant memory. I had found a new sense of purpose, a new lease on life, a new reason to wake up every morning with a smile on my face. And yet I knew that I could never forget the lessons I had learned, the battles I had fought, the strength I had found within myself. Those experiences had shaped me, molded me into the woman I was today. A woman who knew her own worth, her own power, her own unbreakable spirit. A knock on the door startled me from my thoughts. I turned to see Olivia, a smile on her face, a file in her hand. "Sorry to interrupt, Stella, but I thought you should see this," she said, handing me the file. I opened it, my eyes scanning the pages, my heart skipping a beat. It was a report from the parole board detailing Zeke and Natalie's latest hearing. "They were denied," Olivia said softly. "The board cited their lack of remorse as their continued attempts to manipulate and deceive. They'll be staying behind bars for a long time to come." I felt a rush of emotions, relief, sadness, a twinge of pity for the broken, twisted souls they had become. But I also felt a sense of closure, a final chapter in the story of our shared past. "Thank you, Olivia," I said, my voice steady and strong, "for everything you've done, for standing by me through it all. I couldn't have made it without you." She smiled, her eyes shining with warmth and affection. "You give yourself too little credit, Stella. You're the strongest, most resilient person I know. You've overcome more than most people could even imagine." I hugged her, feeling a rush of gratitude and love for this woman who had been my rock, my anchor, my unwavering supporter through the darkest of times. As she left the office, I turned back to the balcony, my eyes drawn to a small framed photo on the wall. It was a picture of my father, his face beaming with pride and joy, his arm around a much younger version of myself. I felt a pang of grief, a moment of longing for the man who had been my guiding light, my North Star, my constant source of love and support. But I also felt a sense of deep, abiding gratitude for the legacy he had left me, the values he had instilled in me, the strength he had helped me find within myself. "I miss you, Dad," I whispered, my fingers tracing the outline of his face. "But I know you're always with me, always watching over me. And I promise I'll make you proud. I'll honor your memory, every single day." As I stepped back from the photo, I felt a sense of renewed purpose, a fire burning bright in my heart. I had been through hell and back, had faced the worst that life could throw at me, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever before. I was a survivor, a fighter, a woman who had claimed her power and her truth, and I knew, with a certainty that blazed like the sun, that nothing could ever hold me back, ever again. I smiled, my eyes fixed on the horizon, my heart filled with hope and possibility. The future was mine, and I was ready to face it, head-on, with all the strength and courage of a true warrior. The tension hung thick in the air as I took my usual seat at the worn oak table, steeling myself for the confrontation I knew was coming. Ronan's cold, distant gaze never wavered as he folded his hands on the scarred tabletop, the setting sun filtering through the kitchen window, casting an eerie glow on his features. "Alara, we need to talk," he began, his voice carefully measured, devoid of any warmth or emotion. My stomach churned with dread, but I remained silent, waiting for the inevitable. I'm leaving you," Ronan said, the words cutting through the oppressive silence like a knife. I stared at him, stunned, as his next words shattered the fragile veneer of our marriage. "I'm in love with someone else. Celeste. She's pregnant, and we're going to start a new life together." The air left my lungs in a rush, and I gripped the edge of the table, knuckles turning white. Ronan, my husband of 10 years, the man I had built a life with, was abandoning me. For her, a woman young enough to be his daughter, who had wormed her way into our lives under the guise of a perfect, doting partner. "How could you do this to me?" The words escaped my lips in a hoarse whisper, laced with a mixture of disbelief and anguish. "After everything I've sacrificed for you, for your mother." Ronan's eyes narrowed, a flicker of annoyance crossing his features. "Don't make this about you, Alara. This is about my happiness, something I haven't had in a very long time, thanks to you." I recoiled as if he had struck me, the pain of his callous words searing through my chest. "Your happiness?" I spat, my voice rising with each word. "What about my happiness? What about the life we built together?" Ronan scoffed, shaking his head. "That life was nothing but a burden. You constantly nagged me about our finances, about starting a family. I couldn't take it anymore. Celeste understands me in a way you never did." Margot, who had been quietly observing from the doorway, stepped forward, her frail frame trembling with barely contained fury. "How dare you, Ronan? Alara has devoted herself to this family, to caring for you and me. And this is how you repay her?" Ronan's jaw tightened, his gaze flickering to his mother, a spark of defiance in his eyes. "Stay out of this, Mother. This is between Alara and me." "No, Ronan," I interjected, my voice steady despite the maelstrom of emotions raging within me. "This affects all of us. How could you do this? How could you just throw everything away?" Ronan's lips curled into a cold, humorless smile. "Because I can. Because I'm done. I'm leaving, Alara, and there's nothing you can do to stop me." With those final words, he rose from his chair and strode out of the kitchen, leaving me and Margot in stunned silence. I stared at the empty doorway, my mind racing, the weight of his betrayal threatening to crush me. But even as the tears threatened to spill, I knew one thing with certainty. I would not go down without a fight. The minutes after Ronan's bombshell announcement felt like an eternity. Margot and I sat in stunned silence, the air thick with a mix of anger, betrayal, and disbelief. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears, the adrenaline coursing through my veins. But in the midst of the chaos, a spark of determination ignited within me. We can't just let him do this, I said, turning to Margot, my voice laced with resolve. There has to be something we can do. Margot's eyes narrowed, a glimmer of steel in her gaze. Oh, there is, my dear. That boy has always been reckless, thinking he can get away with anything, but this time he's gone too far. I watched as Margot's fingers tightened around the armrest of her chair, her knuckles turning white. I always knew that Celeste was trouble, the way she wormed her way into our lives, acting all sweet and innocent, but I saw right through her facade. What do you mean? I asked, leaning forward. That Margot let out a weary sigh. There were little things, little clues that didn't add up. The way she would always steer the conversation away from her past, the expensive gifts she would lavish on Ronan. I had my suspicions, but I never imagined it would come to this. I felt a surge of hope. If Margot had noticed something off about Celeste, maybe there was a way to uncover the truth and use it against Ronan and his mistress. We need to dig deeper, I said, determination etching itself into my features. I won't let him do this to us, to me. Not without a fight. Margot nodded, a grim expression settling on her face. Then that's exactly what we'll do. I may be old, but I still have a few tricks up my sleeve. Over the next few days, Margot and I set to work, scouring through every piece of information we could find on Celeste. We combed through her social media profiles, her financial records, anything that might give us a clue about her true nature. And then, just as we were about to give up, we stumbled upon a bombshell. Alara, look at this, Margot said, her voice trembling with a mix of shock and triumph. She thrust a stack of papers into my hands, and as I pored over the documents, I felt my breath catch in my throat. This can't be real, I whispered, my fingers trembling. Celeste she's involved with a criminal organization? Margot nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line. It seems our dear Ronan has gotten himself tangled up with some very dangerous people, and if we play our cards right, we can use this to our advantage. I looked up at Margot, a flicker of hope igniting in my chest. You mean we can get back at them? Make them pay for what they've done? Margot's lips curled into a grim smile. Exactly, my dear. And I know just the person who can help us. With that, she reached for the phone, her fingers dancing across the keypad. I watched, a sense of anticipation and trepidation building within me. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for certain. Ronan and Celeste would not get away with this. Not if I had anything to say about it. The phone call Margot made that day proved to be a turning point in our quest for justice. Within a matter of hours, a well-dressed, nondescript man named Everett arrived at our doorstep, his sharp eyes scanning the room with a calculating gaze. So you've got a problem with your son-in-law and his girlfriend, Everett said, his deep voice carrying a hint of amusement. Sounds like you ladies could use a little professional help. Margot wasted no time in laying out the details, her voice laced with barely contained fury. That scoundrel has betrayed my daughter, drained our savings, and is now running off with some harlot who's involved with a criminal organization. We want him to pay for what he's done. Everett's eyebrows rose slightly, and he turned his gaze to me. And what about you, Miss Alara? Are you ready to play hardball? I met his stare with unwavering determination. I am. Ronan has taken everything from me. My marriage, my financial security, my future. I want him to pay for his deceit, and I want Celeste to go down with him. Everett's lips curled into a slight smile. Good, then let's get to work. Over the next few weeks, Everett proved to be a formidable ally. With his connections and expertise, he swiftly uncovered the truth about Celeste, her involvement with a notorious criminal syndicate, her elaborate web of lies and manipulation. This Celeste woman is no ordinary mistress, Everett said, his eyes narrowing as he pored over the documentation. She's using Ronan as a pawn, siphoning his resources to fund her organization's nefarious activities. Margot let out a harsh laugh. I knew that little viper was up to no good, and Ronan the fool has fallen right into her trap. I felt a grim sense of satisfaction at the revelation. So, what do we do now? How do we bring them down? Everett's gaze hardened. We take them out, one piece at a time. First, we need to expose Celeste's true nature to Ronan, shatter the illusion he's living in. Then we start chipping away at his career and finances until he has nothing left. Margot leaned forward, her eyes glinting with determination. And what about Celeste's criminal connections? Surely we can use that against her. Everett nodded. Absolutely. I have a few ideas on how we can disrupt her organization's operations, sow discord among her partners. That should make her very, very uncomfortable. As Everett outlined his plan, I felt a surge of anticipation. Ronan and Celeste had underestimated us, thinking they could get away with their betrayal. But they were wrong. We had the upper hand now, and I was more than ready to use it. Let's do it, I said, my voice firm. I want them to pay for what they've done. I want them to feel the same pain and humiliation that they've inflicted on me. Everett's smile widened. Then let's get to work, ladies. This is going to be a wild ride. With that, we dove headfirst into our carefully crafted scheme, determined to bring Ronan and Celeste's world crashing down around them. I may have been the victim, but now I was the one holding all the cards. The evidence Everett had uncovered was a powerful weapon, and we wasted no time in putting it to use. With a newfound sense of purpose, Margot and I confronted Ronan, ready to unleash the full force of our carefully orchestrated plan. Ronan's face twisted into a sneer as I laid out the damning details before him. You think a few papers are going to scare me, Alara? I hold all the cards here. Celeste and I are going to start a new life together, and there's nothing you can do to stop us. I felt a surge of anger at his arrogance, his blatant disregard for the pain he had caused. Oh, Ronan, you have no idea what you're up against, I said, my voice dripping with cold fury. Celeste isn't who you think she is. She's been using you, siphoning your resources to fund her criminal activities. Ronan's eyes widened briefly, but his expression quickly hardened. You're lying. Celeste loves me, and she would never do something like that. Wake up, Ronan, Margot interjected, her frail frame trembling with barely contained rage. Your precious Celeste is nothing more than a snake in the grass, and you're the one who's been fooled. Ronan's jaw tightened, and he leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. You two are grasping at straws. Celeste and I are going to be together, and there's nothing you can do about it. I met his gaze unflinchingly, a steely determination burning in my chest. Oh, we can do plenty, Ronan, and we will. You've taken everything from me. My marriage, my financial security, my future. Now it's time for you to pay. Ronan scoffed, shaking his head. You're delusional, Alara. You think you can just waltz in and ruin my life? I hold all the power here. Celeste and I are going to live happily ever after, and there's nothing you can do to stop us. I felt a surge of disgust at his arrogance, his complete disregard for the pain he had caused. You're wrong, Ronan. We have the evidence to expose Celeste's true nature, and we're going to use it to bring you both down. Ronan's expression darkened, and he leaned back in his chair, his fingers drumming against the table. Go ahead, Alara. Do your worst, but I promise you, you'll regret it. With that, he stood and strode out of the room, leaving Margot and me in stunned silence. But as the door slammed shut behind him, I felt a newfound determination settle in my bones. Well, Alara, Margot said, her voice laced with a hint of pride, it seems we've struck a nerve. I nodded, a grim smile tugging at the corners of my lips. Yes, we have, and now it's time to put our plan into action. Over the next few weeks, Margot and I, with Everett's guidance, set our plan in motion. We meticulously dismantled Ronan's carefully constructed facade, exposing his affair and financial misdeeds to his employer, leading to his dismissal. We used social engineering to sow discord between Ronan and Celeste, planting seeds of doubt that slowly eroded their relationship. And all the while, Ronan remained unaware of the full scope of our plan, his arrogance blinding him to the impending doom that was about to descend upon him. As the weeks passed, I watched with a grim satisfaction as Ronan's carefully constructed world began to crumble around him. With Everett's guidance and Margot's unwavering support, I systematically dismantled every aspect of Ronan's life, leaving him desperate and powerless. First, I targeted his career. Using information from the private investigator, I meticulously laid out the evidence of Ronan's financial misdeeds and his affair with Celeste to his employer. Within days, he was summoned to a meeting and unceremoniously fired, his reputation in shambles. The look of utter disbelief on Ronan's face when he returned home, his briefcase clutched tightly in his hand, was almost enough to make me feel remorse. But then I remembered the anguish he had inflicted on me, the way he had so callously discarded our marriage, and any pity I might have felt dissipated. "What is the meaning of this, Alara?" he demanded, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. "How dare you meddle in my professional life?" I met his gaze unflinchingly, my expression cold and impassive. "I told you, Ronan, you've taken everything from me, and now it's time for you to pay." Margot, who had been silently observing from the corner, spoke up, her voice laced with venom. "You have no one to blame but yourself, you foolish boy. Your greed and your selfishness have brought this upon you." Ronan's eyes darted between us, his face flushed with rage. "This isn't over, Alara. Celeste and I will find a way to start a new life, and you won't be able to stop us." I laughed, the sound devoid of any warmth. "Oh, Ronan, you still don't understand, do you? Celeste is not who you think she is. She's been using you all along, draining your resources to fund her own criminal activities." The color drained from Ronan's face, and for a moment I saw a flicker of doubt cross his features. "No, that can't be true. Celeste loves me. She would never—" "Open your eyes, Ronan," Margot interjected, her frail frame shaking with barely contained fury. "That woman is a snake, and she's been playing you for a fool. And now you're about to lose everything because of your own arrogance and stupidity." Ronan's expression darkened, and he took a step towards us, his fists clenched at his sides. "I won't let you ruin this for me, Alara. Celeste and I are going to be together, no matter what it takes." "Oh, but you already have, Ronan," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "You see, we've been working with a private investigator, and he's uncovered the truth about Celeste's involvement with a notorious criminal network." Ronan's eyes widened, and for a moment he seemed to lose his footing, the realization of his mistake dawning on him. "You're lying. Celeste would never—" "Believe it, Ronan," I interrupted, my tone unyielding. "Celeste is nothing more than a con artist, and you've been her pawn all along. And now it's time for you to face the consequences of your actions." With that, I turned on my heel and left the room, Margot following close behind. As we walked away, I could feel Ronan's eyes burning into my back, the weight of his rapidly crumbling world bearing down on him. It was a small victory, but it was only the beginning. I knew that Ronan and Celeste wouldn't go down without a fight, and I was more than ready to meet them head-on. This was a game of cat and mouse, and I was determined to emerge victorious. As the weeks passed, Ronan's world continued to crumble around him. The revelations about Celeste's criminal connections and his own misdeeds had a devastating impact, shattering the carefully constructed facade he had built. I watched with a mix of satisfaction and pity as Ronan's life unraveled. He lost his job, his reputation tarnished beyond repair. Celeste, once the object of his affection, turned on him, abandoning him in his darkest hour. The day Ronan finally realized the full extent of his downfall was etched into my memory. I'll never forget the look of utter despair on his face as he stood before us, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "This can't be happening," he whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Celeste, she's betrayed me. Everything I've worked for, everything I've sacrificed, it's all gone." Margot, her frail frame belying the steely resolve in her eyes, stepped forward, her expression unforgiving. "That's what you get, Ronan, for your greed and your selfishness. You deserve every bit of this punishment." Ronan's gaze snapped to his mother, a flicker of defiance igniting in his eyes. "How dare you, Mother? This is all your fault and Alara's. If you two hadn't meddled in my life, I'd be happy right now, with Celeste and our child." I felt a surge of anger at his words, my hands clenching into fists at my sides. "Your happiness? What about my happiness, Ronan? What about the life we built together? You threw it all away without a second thought." Ronan scoffed, shaking his head. "You were never enough for me, Alara. Celeste understood me in a way you never could. She saw my potential, my ambition. You were just a burden, holding me back." The words felt like a physical blow, and I had to fight the urge to lash out at him. But before I could respond, Margot stepped in, her eyes blazing with righteous fury. "How dare you, you ungrateful boy! Alara has sacrificed everything for this family, for you, and this is how you repay her? With lies and betrayal?" Ronan's expression hardened, and he took a step towards Margot, his voice laced with venom. "Stay out of this, Mother. This is between Alara and me." "No, Ronan," I interjected, my voice steady despite the maelstrom of emotions raging within me. "This affects all of us. Your actions have consequences, and now you're going to face them." Ronan's eyes widened as I produced a small recording device, the display flashing with the timestamp of our previous confrontation. What is this? Insurance, I said, my lips curling into a grim smile. You see, Ronan, I knew you wouldn't go down without a fight, so I made sure to document everything, including your confession of infidelity and your admission of financial crimes. Ronan's face drained of color, and he took a step back, his hands trembling. You can't do this. That recording is inadmissible, and you have no proof of my wrongdoings. I shook my head, my expression unyielding. Oh, but we do, Ronan. Everett has been working tirelessly to uncover the truth, and he's compiled a mountain of evidence against you and your precious Celeste. Ronan's eyes darted between Margot and me, his usual bravado crumbling in the face of our unwavering resolve. This can't be happening, he whispered, his voice laced with despair. But it is, Ronan, I said, my tone laced with a sense of finality. And now it's time for you to face the consequences of your actions. With those words, I turned and walked away, leaving Ronan to confront the grim reality of his shattered dreams. As I did so, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction, not out of cruelty, but from the knowledge that justice was finally being served. As Ronan's world crumbled around him, I felt a sense of grim satisfaction wash over me. The evidence we had gathered, meticulously compiled by Everett, had proven to be our trump card. I watched as Ronan's arrogance and self-assurance melted away, replaced by a growing desperation. He stood before us, his face a mask of disbelief and fury, as I revealed the full extent of my plan. This can't be happening, he stammered, his eyes darting between Margot and me. You can't do this to me. I won't let you ruin everything I've worked for. I felt a surge of vindication at his words, knowing that the tables had finally turned. Oh, but we can, Ronan. And we will. You see, we have recordings of our previous confrontations, where you've openly confessed to your infidelity and financial misdeeds. Ronan's face drained of color, and he took a step back, his hands trembling. No, that's impossible. You couldn't have. I held up a hand, silencing him. But we did, Ronan. And that's not all. Everett has uncovered a wealth of evidence linking you and Celeste to a vast network of criminal activities. Margot stepped forward, her eyes narrowed in contempt. You thought you could get away with your betrayal, didn't you, boy? Well, now you're going to pay for your sins, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Ronan's expression twisted with anguish and rage. You're lying. Celeste would never betray me like this. She loves me. She needs me. I shook my head, my voice laced with a sense of pity. I'm afraid that's not the case, Ronan. Celeste has been using you all along, draining your resources to fund her own criminal ventures. She never cared about you, only about what you could provide for her. Ronan's knees buckled, and he sank into a nearby chair, his head in his hands. No, he muttered, the words barely audible. This can't be happening. My life, my future, everything I've worked for. I watched him, my heart hardening against the sight of his despair. After everything he had done to me, to us, I felt no remorse for the consequences he now faced. It's over, Ronan, I said, my voice firm. You're going to be held accountable for your actions, both legally and financially, and Celeste will face the consequences of her crimes as well. Ronan looked up, his eyes wild with desperation. Please, Alara, you have to help me. I'll do anything, just make this go away. I can't lose everything, I can't. I held up a hand, silencing him. It's too late for that, Ronan. You made your choice, and now you have to live with the consequences. Margot and I, we're moving on. We're going to start a new life, one without you in it. Ronan opened his mouth, but no words came out. He sat there, utterly defeated, as the reality of his downfall sank in. I turned to Margot, a small, sad smile on my lips. Come on, Mother, let's go. We have a future to build. As Margot and I walked away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. Ronan had betrayed me, but in the end, justice had prevailed. And now, with the remaining assets from our marriage, Margot and I could start anew, free from the shadow of his deceit. As Ronan's world crumbled around him, Margot and I wasted no time in moving on with our lives. With the remainder of our assets, we were able to secure a comfortable new home in a quiet, suburban neighborhood, a fresh start away from the pain and betrayal we had endured. I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief as we settled into our new surroundings, the weight of the past few months slowly lifting from my shoulders. Margot, too, seemed to thrive in our new environment, her mobility issues improving as she engaged with the local community. "It's amazing how much better I feel being out of that old house," Margot said one evening as we sat together on our patio, the setting sun casting a warm glow across the well-manicured lawn. "That place held so many memories, both good and bad. Now it's like we can breathe again." I nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of my lips. "I know what you mean, Mother. It's been a long and difficult journey, but I'm grateful we have this chance to start anew." Margot reached out and squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with a mixture of pride and affection. "And I'm grateful to have you, my dear. You've been through so much, and yet you've come out of it stronger than ever." I felt a surge of emotion at her words, and I blinked back the tears that threatened to fall. "I couldn't have done it without you, Margot. Your support, your unwavering belief in me, it's what kept me going." Margot chuckled, her expression softening. "Nonsense, my dear. You are the one who took charge, who fought back against that despicable son of mine. I may have provided a listening ear and a shoulder to lean on, but you were the one who orchestrated his downfall." I nodded, a sense of pride swelling in my chest. It wasn't easy, but I knew I had to do it. Ronan took so much from me, from us. I couldn't just let him walk away and start a new life, not after everything he's done. Margot's expression sobered, and she squeezed my hand again. "You're right, Alara. Ronan deserved every bit of what he got, and I'm glad to see that he's finally facing the consequences of his actions." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as the last rays of the sun dipped below the horizon. It was a peaceful scene, a far cry from the turmoil we had experienced just a few months ago. "You know," I said, breaking the silence, "I think I'm ready to start focusing on my own future again. I've spent so long taking care of others, it's time I started taking care of myself." Margot smiled, her eyes sparkling with a newfound energy. "I couldn't agree more, my dear, and I'm more than happy to lend a hand. After all, we're in this together, now and always." With that, we rose from our seats and headed inside, the warmth of the evening air enveloping us. As I walked through the halls of our new home, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hope and optimism for the future. Ronan's betrayal had shattered my world, but with Margot by my side, I was ready to rebuild it, brick by brick. This was a new chapter, one filled with the promise of redemption and the pursuit of happiness. And as I looked to the road ahead, I knew that whatever challenges lay in wait, I was more than ready to face them head on.